6 months here. I can walk you through it. If you have any questions, we can dive in as deep as you want. I can tell you what my thoughts are going forward for the balance of the year, and we can cover all that stuff. So Joe has it up here. So flip over past the cover. This will be the report that's included in the board package going out for the 21st. They don't have page numbers on yet, and so we number them with Janice. But the second page in is just it highlights part all your tenures, and they're one of the former board members said, is there one page we could look at? So we threw this in here. So up on the top, as we've been discussing for the past 5 months, is revenues are unfavorable to budget by about $3.7 million, and that's due to the budget expenditures are lower than what we're budgeting. So the key there is that it's primarily in the federal funds. We're not utilizing the 5307 flex for the PM or ADA, because as you can see on the bottom here, our net operating position is a $2.6 million surplus. So we do have our PM 5307 that is programmed. There's about a balance of $6 million, but if I save that and don't have to program like 21s or 22s, that's more left for available capital when we start expanding or tending to the building here or the lot. So I think in the past someone's asked, well, why wouldn't you put the PM in? I'm like, well, if I put the PM in, we'll be 8.6 or 8.6 million favorable. So I might as well just save it. We do budget it as the assumption to put it in there, but right now, obviously, you're well aware that the headcount in operations is lower. We did not budget in the operating expenses this year any of the incentive programs that we currently have. That's the bonus program, as well as $2 an hour and $3 an hour shift premiums to make sure that hours worked for people. So we're all covering that. So our operating expenses were favorable $3.4 million. And that's as you can see in the narrative there, $1.8 million on labor. Not a whole lot of it. You don't see as much of it in the transportation side, because we're covering those incentive programs, which we're going to put into the fiscal 24 budget. Cash position, $9.3 million of cash, $5.4 million in the operating, capital's 3.8. As this is December 31st, within like a week, we're funding the third quarter CBTDA, so that cash balance will go up to about $10 million. So looking on page 3 there, this is the source of funds. This whole reporting format is kind of based on what the NTD is. So this is what we file in every October. So we're trying to follow that so that we can have a uniform methodology, so the board understands what we do and where we file it. So as you can see here, directly generated funds, slightly favorable, 137,000. The other agency funds, 4150 to 182,000 favorable. That's basically interest income. Balance as well as return with the inverted yield curve. We're earning more in the LGIPs than we had anticipated. The total passenger fare is a slight $5,000 unfavorable. That's the pass program of BCU. It's just off slightly. And then the auxiliary transportation revenue, that's advertising revenue for 40,498 unfavorable. That's because the program has been suspended. We kind of backloaded what the advertising revenue. We still have the naming rights that are going in there primarily, but not much from the bus advertising side. 4,300 line local governments. That's all the operating contributions, and CBTA was right on, slightly favorable. State government funds. That's basically primarily our TISDAC, which we're on budget for, but there's also some state operating grants, which we're a little behind on. That's why we're about 187,000. That's basically timing of the expenditure versus reimbursement. And as you can see, the majority of the unfavorableness is in the 4,500 to 50, the federal funds, which is due to our spending being lower. So next page, different analytics here. This is just kind of the summary of the revenue streams, and some people are more graphical, so it's just basically a different format of what was on the previous page. Next page, this is just, this is an eye chart, and this is just in here for perspective.
From perspective, that everything's really small.
Right, but for layout. So you can see the column on the left here is the vehicle operations and vehicle maintenance, facility maintenance, general administration, and total. So when you go to the next page, you'll see those are the columnar breakouts of that. But you see this, so this would be the far right column in the big report. So we had, we had that in there. As much as we blew it up on screen, no one could see it. So this basically is the total, so that you can see the labor and the top variance is 1.8 million, and then you can see the distribution, and then subsequent pages. It's on double-sided, so it goes, then the next page, starting on the top, you see this is vehicle operations. With their, with their come straight, let's focus on that one right here. So you can see the labor, the total variance is 1.3 million, 1.032 million favorable. The operator salaries and wages are only 182,000. That's because unbudgeted was all the incentive programs. So all the actual expenses for the incentive, the recruiting retention programs are hitting in the actual, but they were not budgeted. You see that in the next grouping, the 03 line, that's basically our supervisors and our operations our dispatch folks were favorable on that. And then the big bogey on the bottom, as you can see, that it accentuates the point is the fringe benefits, because our head count is down. We're not paying the pension contributions or the medical. You would expect in a normal budgetary, you would expect the line one to be more favorable, but we're eating away by the incentive programs.
So is this, tell me if this is too rudimentary of a breakdown? We're halfway through the year.
Yep.
And we're 2.6
million.
let's just call it 6 million. We're on track to have a $6 million surplus.
I think it's going to curtail, because what happened, the maintenance folks are up to full staffing basically. Yeah, and then it could be 5, it could be 4, because we're also paying retention bonuses for the maintenance as well as the shift premiums for those.
There's going to be a sizable surplus in the year.
Correct.
From revenue.
That is correct.
Literal cash left over.
Correct.
Unrestricted cash.
Well, this is what we just, when we have the 25% reserve at the end of the fiscal year, we didn't do it for fiscal 22. We can bring it back. We can put it in the unrestricted fund.
We need to
reserve fund, so that
work
for
on future
expansion.
there.
Yeah, so when Adrian shows you that we have this deficit of the zero fare, we can pull out of here.
You showed us from like 2020.
2032.
And we basically said 2028.
We got this, but we gotta make it this.
Correct. So this, you're absolutely correct.
This is a savings account for that,
Correct.
to lower that pain threshold for 5 years.
Because wasn't it 28? 28 was where.
So that's
it's
what,
not too rudimentary, but
No.
I think that if there's a surplus, we put it there.
but we
Actually,
can,
surplus, we put it there.
we can probably bring back in either the February meeting or the March meeting with the surplus, because we've gotten the final audited numbers from 22. We can put the resolution to put that surplus into that contingency fund. Right now it's 5.7 million, but we'll add that to it.
100%, that's the seed funding. And then this year is double seed funding. And then that pays the way for us to do the good work that we want to do in 2028 through 2032 to make that surplus.
And also, looking at just, some of the bogeys that are in there in the first 6 months here, we had the benefit of a diesel contract that favorable pricing through September. There's some discussion about the city of Richmond's utility meter and natural gas, whether it was reading right or wrong. So there may be a little bit of a tick up, as well as
It was absolutely right if it's not favorable.
of course, it is. Well, my comment when they talked about it, I said, well, then how are they going to prove what the usage
We
was?
should pay what we use, but they need to be able to prove it.
Right.
I mean, we don't wanna cheat anybody, but they can't cheat us either, like, they gotta prove it.
Yeah, what I asked my staff was just to go back for the, last 12-month periods, 2 years to go show what the CCF usage was. So we'd have that
So
baseline.
the question is though, is it definitely working now?
I'm not sure that they replace it or not. Or is there
I mean,
discussion?
because we can't keep, like, they gotta, if it doesn't work, they got to.
So Andres, all we talked about was we're going over a review where we're at. We're 6 months through the year, showing a $2.6 to $3 million surplus due to staffing shortages. We had 5.7 was the number last year.
Okay.
So we're on target to end this year at 4 to 5-ish. So you're looking at about 10 at the end of these 2 years, and bringing up a resolution to take last year's and this year's and put it in a surplus fund, 25%, whatever goal surplus fund, to help the pain threshold
For
for 2028.
Right.
When we get to that zero fail problem. That's all, that's what we're at.
That's a good summary. Shell game money.
Well, it's just, it's saving for the pain.
It's not a shell game, it's taking this and making it this.
It's nothing different than any one of our families people that we serve do when they're planning for kids for college. They have an expense on the horizon that they know is coming for the next 4 to 8 years for 2 kids. And they're putting it away now to make sure that they pay for it.
Makes sense to me.
So going back to the total GRTC one, so that we see in this, what's this total GRTC in the top here? So you're going down, your services, it's favorable, 248,000. So, we have, this one, the first page of those.
That's why I'm gonna see it. I wouldn't see thought.
So, yeah, I'm gonna talk about it in the total, and then if you wanna see the pieces, they're back there, but, so on the services, we have in the first category, in the 5,020.03, the professional, technical services were 461,000 favorable. Largest piece of that is about $297,000 in the planning and scheduling consulting. That's the money that was budgeted for the strategic transit strategic plan and ridership study that hasn't gotten off the ground yet, so that's why that's favorable. And then we have some advertising and promotion expenses, which we will determine what's going on there as well for the favorability. Now, in the second grouping of the contract maintenance services, you'll see that the computer maintenance is unfavorable by $190,000. That's driven by the Oracle computer license maintenance that we're currently putting in the Oracle ERP. As you may be aware, the ERP implementation was earmarked to be funded with ARC money. So, and when we did put together the 2023 budget, Julie wanted to keep the ARC money projects outside of the operating budget. So in the budget column, there's not the money for the operating, for the maintenance license for Oracle. So 2024, our goal is to show, whatever's planned to be funded by ARC as a revenue as well as expense. So here, this is one of these other opportunities. We can take the computer, the $190,000 worth of Oracle computer maintenance agreements, and we can submit it to the FTA under the ARPA and get reimbursement back. We haven't done it. We're cash positive. We're incredibly favorable. So we have a decision. We can just let it ride the way it is, or we can adjust course. The building maintenance unfavorable, the 103,000. My understanding is that that's the cleaning contract, which should probably go down in the materials and supplies consumed category below. So that's kind of a mischarging. Materials and supplies consumed, the 55030, it's favorable 634,000. This is primarily in the fuels and lubricant lines. That's based upon when we were putting the budget together. We are at $5 a gallon gas, and we thought doom and gloom was coming. So we were probably a little bit heavy, as well as in there, the fuel and lubricants, that's where the CNG actually goes in for the buses. So if they've been under, that could be contributing to that as well. The reclass for the cleaning that's up in the building maintenance would come down into the other materials and supplies line, which would probably eat away the vehicle equipment, parts, supplies, favorability. But pretty much everything is pretty much favorable. Flipping the page, the utilities were about $31,000 favorable. And this is your telecommunications and your electricity and your water. We basically looked at what our usage was and to current rates and then play them a little bit. The casualty and liability favorability, that's primarily, they tend to book, or we book the provision for losses at year end. So that's, the uninsured motorists or self-insured losses is usually booked. So that's why it's favorable at this point. But when we forecast for the year, we'll probably remove out of the 2.6, we'll say maybe, 300,000 or 400,000. The 2.6 is not real. And that's, when we project it. So we'll start crystallizing what we think our outlook for the year is. Purchase transportation, that's basically our care and care plus, as well as the van pool, basically demand related that it's down. So that's pretty much the highlights of the expense. As the previous chair liked to say, below budget, not favorable. You can't have favorable expenses. Expenses are below budget because you can't have favorable labor because people are not here. So then flipping to after going through all those charts, there is the same kind of presentation of, the chart version of this. And in here, what we introduce here about a third of the way down is the the operating expense per mile and the operating expense per hour, so that you can kind of get a sense of, you know, what it costs us to provide service for operator mile, for service mile or service hour. Flipping over to the back of that, there's a little narrative of what I kind of just went through, but then here's the category, the breakdown of the operating expense by mile, so you can kind of see what vehicle operations is, you know, out of the $11.47 actual for operating cents per mile, $7.15 is based upon operations. Now, $1.42 is maintenance, and $2.48 is sort of roughly 20% is G&A, and 80% is basically the, you know, the variable types. And one of the benefits of putting the ERP system as we do this, we're going to have more granularity to really see what the operating expenses are per mile and service hour, so that when we start looking at expansion and investing capital, we'll be able to have much better forecasts and understand what is a good decision and what would not be a good decision. So we're excited to get through that. Flipping on to the next page, you know, there's in the middle of the page, there's further breakouts by different categories for the operating expense an hour. And then you can see the head count, which we talked about is the majority, you know, transportation. This is as of December 31st, was about 51 vacant positions in operators. And you can see that these are stacked bar charts on overtime, that we're running probably about, you know, 8%, 9% on overtime and transportation to cover, to be able to get shifts out. So in addition to the incentives not being budgeted, the overtime is kind of eating away a little bit. Is that what we're
Do we
still?
think maintenance overtime is gonna go down with full staff, or do we think that there's?
I think it should be coming down, because he's up to, at December, he was just getting the full staff, and they're gonna have some unfavorable, in this month, you kind of see maintenance turned a little bit unfavorable. That's because of the incentive and retention pay not being budgeted, and now as it got, you know, almost near staff.
Yeah, there will always be some overtime because of
Yeah.
absenteeism, but it shouldn't be as high when a full staff. Not full staff.
If it is, then you don't have enough staff. I'm just saying.
And we still don't have enough staff. Typically, it's where he is back to pre-pandemic levels. So pre-pandemic, he's still short about 4 or 5 kids. We still are hiring. That's what it is.
And then the next page is kind of more of a traditional income statement. So on the top, we have our operating revenue. This is, you know, more in line with what our audited financials look like. So year to date, you know, the column to the right, operating revenues unfavorable, $45,000, driven by advertising revenue, because the program is, you know, the program for advertising the buses has been delayed. So that budget really is primarily backloaded, and the past program is within, you know, within $5,000. You can see in the other income, you know, it's favorable 182,000 being driven by interest income rather, excuse me. And that's based upon the inverted yield curve driving up the returns in LGIP. In the center of the page, the operating contributions, this is what we talked about. You can see that the operating contributions for federal and state are slightly unfavorable. Just a little different presentation. You know, we do have some COVID relief funds that we've utilized for programs that were approved to be funded by that. And down on the bottom, as you can see, all the operating categories, each one is favorable. So then you can see in the middle towards the bottom, the change in position is 2.6 million. The budget contemplated that this year to be about $2.9 million surplus, but we're behind that, but we're still favorable. And the next page is the GRTC balance sheet. As on the summary page, you can see what I look at is, you know, the cash balance. It's slightly down from year end, and the receivable balances are down. So current assets are down about $6.7 million. The main driver of that is that we purchased a significant amount of yellow buses at the end of fiscal 22. So a lot of them were sitting there. You can see that large receivable number, 11.1 million. That's where a lot of the grant receivable was sitting. So basically, the tail from June 30th to December 31st as we realized our receivables and put it in cash. Also, our operating cycle, the first quarter of our fiscal year, July through September, is more cash intensive as we pay a lot of our risk management policies and so forth. So all in all, I think we're in a strong balance sheet position. All outs, in the other assets, the second line down, the restricted fund CBTA, that's our deferred revenue, or basically our collections for next fiscal year. It's at 28 million. Nothing real crazy, other than the balance sheet is pretty strong. Next page. This is the actual report. This is the quarter ending December 31st. This is our CBTA special fund. I filed that with CBTA. We have to file it within 45 days from year end, or quarter end, excuse me. So that was filed. The thing I note was, out of here, I put a little asterisk. The month of November 2022, we came in with receipt on January 9th. They usually tend to get in the last week, but that's the only anomaly on this report. We had very little expenses. The micromobility, the main draw was the second quarter operating and capitals. So if you look at the cash balance of 5-point-something million we have, we added another $5.4 million in January as we pulled it over. So we're in a good cash position in January. The next page here, this is the rolling one. This would be the preparation of the next quarter, and you can see the receipts that came in. As you can see, the interest income is at $50,000 on the LGIP, and then the shares, because of what was transpiring in the month of January, we saw positive returns in the equity markets. LGIP, as though it sounds, you think it's more fixed. There is some equity involvement in that, so we're getting our unrealized gains back, whereas the prior page, you probably see there are some unrealized losses in at least one of the months. So all in all, there's $27.8 million in CBTA money at the end of January, and the majority of it is $22 million, about 3/4 down the page, is invested in LGIP. I have another $5.7 million in Wells Fargo. I am looking to utilize Wells Fargo has some government-based sweep products that we can get into, which we're looking at, because with the yield curve being inverted, you can get a nice return just by leaving the money and sweeping it overnight, because we're not going to use it. So that's kind of the month of December, and look at the January CBTA in a nutshell. So there's the same story, takeaways, strong cash position, strong balance sheet, no red flags on the horizon that we can tell of at this point.
Question.
What kind of account are we're gonna hold this 10 million or whatever that amount fully is? What kind of account are we keeping that in for interest bearing asset? It's saving it for a couple of years. I'm curious what that can do.
We can look more. Right now, we currently use LGIP. So we can, as we put our plans together, and if we're going to say that we're not going to touch it for 5 or 6 years, we can sit there.
Touch it to 28.
Yeah, we can look at a longer investment horizon, a little more return. Right now, 2022 is a trying year. January seems a little more optimistic, so it's always a little reluctant to try to get too crazy. But we could explore a little bit more than LGIP.
All right, we'll go backwards for a minute. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Motion to approve the minutes. Move. Second. All in favor? All right, Petersburg area transit.
So the update on that is Cheryl, Adrian, and I, we had a meeting with our comrades from Petersburg on January 19th. And, we shared the model that we shared with this group here. Basically, to put it in a nutshell, there's really no common ground. So after an exhausting period with no common ground, we did offer that, hey, why don't we just set it at 92.8? Because they would come back with even though they were asking for 85.15, they presented a model supporting 92.8 just solely on population. So we offered, well, why don't we do the 92.8, get this done for fiscal 22's awards, and agree to develop a model prospectively for fiscal 23. So with that response, they then said that, okay, we'll do 90.10. So it's kind of the strangest negotiating session that we went in. So we proposed that we could hire a third party to do it and, select a bunch. And so what we had to at the end of the thing is that their TPO, Crater City TPO had one individual, our Plan RVA has more resources. So we reached out to Plan RVA TPO to basically to create some models for it. Adrian did some research on what some other entities are doing and how they do it. The goal here is that we try to prove to them, or we try to point out to them, is it's not just population driven. All these different models we look at have both, taken into account the service you put out on the street in addition to population. So very simply, we want to agree on the variables and agree on the model, and then be done, whatever the model spits out, and it has to be sort of, data that is, from the NTD or for the American communities, the American Census Department or so forth.
And what was their response?
Well, they don't even trust the Census Bureau. They said the Census Bureau is riddled with errors, but which is kind of, everybody in this.
So what
neighborhood
data
here,
do they use?
They use whatever data they think is.
Whatever gets
them.
them to 90-10.
Well, they don't have anything that gets them there.
They just pick the number, we can agree.
They've already sent us a letter saying 92.8 is good.
No, they
They
sent
said
us
it's a model.
85-15, but the model they sent was 92.8. They didn't even realize that the model they sent was 92.8. So they
We
said,
think
well,
it's
they'll
what?
settle it.
I mean, what
I think with the final,
yeah, what is,
I think it's, I took into account some of their feedback. I think it's 90. Yeah. it's
97.3?
Yeah, no, it's 94 point something.
Yeah, I thought that was.
95,000,
Yeah,
94.6?
I got it right.
I think 94.6 is probably not quite, but that's probably about as close.
It's right in the ballpark.
I'm trying to go the legal route, I'm creating an MOU, because that would be a lot, we're not the only one who has this problem, so why reinvent it? Still working with the Plan RVA, kind of coming up with the methodology, and they would work with us as a facilitator, and they basically would agree to attributes. They would present other agencies across the nation and variables that they use, and go through what we all agree upon. In the end, trying to make a 10-year MOU that would show that if for some reason they would agree, then it would ultimately up to the TPO to make that decision, and we have the option to do arbitrator. If that's not utilized, and the funding agreement is part of it, and that would also be scrapped. But I mean, the FTA, even trying to third party, it's up to us. That's what it comes to. So we have to agree. It looks like we do have, I think it's more power over, because we're technically the recipients of it.
Yep.
So they more or less kind of have to.
So we could give them whatever we want, and then they have to come after us for the difference of what they think they should get, and they have to prove it.
It has to be agreed upon. So the letter has to be,
So,
Signed by them.
right, it's our letter that's signed on by them, but if they don't agree, I mean, like this one particular, if they agree on the methodology and they don't agree, then they actually did not receive funds at all if they don't respond.
but we won't receive ours either.
No, we receive the funds. If that is agreed upon, it's something that says that.
in the MOU, it should be determined. Right now, without anything in place, we can't put a letter together and nobody advances. So making the adjustments,
Total dollar amount?
well, for the 100% was $17.1 million was for the 5307. So the final calculation, the interesting part was that we're arguing over the 5340, which is your growth. So the growth is 97.77 GRTC and 2.23% them. So when you factor that in, the number is 93.93, so 94.6 is what the split is. If you factor in.
So we're really, they're 90-10, you're arguing about 4%.
4% of 17 million.
On 17 million, which is 171,000 times 4, it's half a.
800 grand, like 700,000 $700,000. And then on the 5339, that award, that's a smaller award, it's 1.4 million. So they're arguing 4% of 1.4 million. So it's frustrating, we just want to have, the methodology we proposed basically takes information out of the NTD and the Census Bureau.
Yeah, we just need a third party to create.
They didn't like that idea because it seemed like we were.
Sure. We'll give you 3 options of third parties you can put on
So the problem,
They said they would pay for it, and that if we pay more, then it would. So that, I think they were okay with it too, yeah. Yeah. But they are agreed to MPO and TPO, and so they both understand and get the TPO from Tri-Cities to be understood, letting them handle it, but explaining it in a logical sort of way. They don't want to hear it from us.
so with the, at the point, even we have a rational model, they just say it's not fair. And we ask them, why is it not fair? Because they don't get more money.
Yeah.
So the point that, comment you can have a conversation with them is that, okay, we have revenue miles of, 9.1 million revenue miles, so there's 600,000. We have, if this is 2019 NTD, we've got $48.4 million for operating expenses, so they're 3.6. Their back office is done by the city of Petersburg. We have a full complement. We're a standalone entity. So all their arguments don't, the census data is wrong. We don't, we're a partial reporter. We didn't put this in, like there's money that gets awarded because we have the bus incentive, because we have the BRT and we have, we put in the information. So the UZA gets it because of what we put in. So the question is, why would we share that with you if you're not contributing?
And most agencies, they're getting their number, it looks like, based on, so the TPOs have to do the same thing, because the money goes to the Michigan region, and then the greater cities get percent, they have to go to the same MOU, I think there's also somewhere.
So do we agree to 90-10 for the year with any kind of agreement to the future, or are we still in limbo?
So
There's no agreement. We're still in the middle, yeah. We won't agree to that, yeah.
And we pointed out to them that there was movement to 91.9, and with the understanding that, we're noting that it was growing up this way. So.
I mean, I guess you said ask those agreements to 90, yes, they agreed to 90.
They put out
We
92.
asked for that,
We didn't.
sorry, but we didn't.
Oh, we didn't agree. Okay.
Talking about 7% off the actual.
So we countered with the 92.8 just to get it done, figuring that we would give up 2%.
What's our legal option?
We don't have one, we either come to an agreement or we don't get the money.
Well, I think working through an MOU with both of us.
They can't, because both sides have to sign off on the agreement to get the money,
It doesn't exist.
or nobody gets the money. They know that they're in a position where,
I just don't understand why if they're using false facts and the numbers are the numbers, why there's no legal route.
well, that's a great
An
question.
independent arbitrator is the judicial system of America.
But they're not there, so the 85-15 is
Soon
actually
as a
the UZA split, and that's what the TPOs are doing. I think they're relying on their TPO to give them, and that's what he's familiar, he's not familiar with transit. So he's giving the same number, and that's what they're relying on. So I think if our TPO can explain to theirs why that's wrong and why all the additional variables, service mile, plus fixed highways,
Let's give
are
it a shot.
important.
What's our deadline? We'll give it a shot. What's our deadline to get that done?
Well, we shared in the call is that, they threw out some like, what's irresponsible. I said, what's irresponsible for me getting our fiscal 23 award in like 2 months? We haven't come to agreement on 22. We haven't programmed our 21 yet because we're still working down our 2020. So it's not like inhibiting our ability to spend capital.
Is it inhibiting them?
They also have on program money as well.
I'm just curious if there's a way to, if we can wait it out long enough, can they get to the point where they go, oh, we need it more than you do? Because right now, they look at how much we're getting and they're like, oh, there's no way they're gonna leave that on the table, so they'll make a deal.
So again, in the conversation, the goal with our TPO is to take it to policy board. So even if the decision's not made, hopefully they will understand that I guess when we have our meetings, they can understand if they don't agree to these, then the TPO will ultimately make a decision and it will go to the policy board.
But which TPO?
Trying to,
Because they're in two different TPOs.
the way that I've been reading, it looks like the money is for the city, it's actually TPO that has.
Okay,
So
well then that would be,
I have to
plain
confirm that,
RDA.
but it would be one RDA.
If that's correct, then, I mean, either way, I'm on both boards, so it doesn't matter to me. I'm sure we can get to, but it's gonna have to go to one of them. To get, and if it goes to, Crater, to be honest with you, they just don't have people, like, they don't have anybody to do it. We're gonna have our, lobbyists for the county go to their meeting and give a report on what's going on at, in Richmond right now, because they got nobody else to do it. And those jurisdictions literally have nobody to tell them what's going on. They don't know. Some of them don't even have county attorneys. Their county attorney is on retainer. Like, okay, I'm like, why don't you just have one of your people come in and do it? And they're like, yeah, why don't we just have one of our people do it? Well, who in here has one? Yeah, we're the only.
Interesting, yeah. Just one other question for you guys, is that, now that we have the finance committee structure, historically, the entire big board had always been the contracting body of the external auditors. Do we want to bring that here? Because we're in February now, so we're gonna start getting engagement letters with Brown Edwards. It's the last year on their multi-year contract. Would it be appropriate to have them address that to this board?
Feeling is 100% from that here. If you need, I don't know how you get there, if you get board approval, if you notify the board, but taking that
Through this committee and.
Yeah, 'cause that way-
100% makes it the same as everything else we ever did.
Right, because we had the briefing from the auditors here, and then we had it at the big board, which it seems that they wanted to have it, rather would prefer to have it here. So I'll request that they address the correspondence to the finance committee.
And do you, I mean, I don't know if it's a body question, or do we feel we need board consent to make that adjustment, or that's an executive decision?
I would think the chair, I think you probably would.
Yeah, maybe bring up that we're gonna do it, and
I think that's.
notify them that we're
Yeah,
gonna
that's
take
what I
the
would
lead
do.
in this thing. And bring it.
Because then you could always, you could hear and interact with the auditor for the required auditor communications and so forth, and then you could make a motion to the big board that you heard it for them to adopt the audit, and then that would be the resolution.
That would be making it normal to every other board that we're on.
Any other business?
Yes. So let me make sure I captured that right. We're gonna make a recommendation from this committee to the chairman for the audit to come through this committee.
Yes.
We also have one more presentation that was had yesterday. I don't know if you want to cue it up.
Okay.
Sure, the operator recruitment campaign was approved last for 6 months, and so that one ends in March. We want to bring to the board the request for an additional 3 months. But Mike Kurt is going to give you guys a presentation, and kind of what the campaign was, what stats look like, and the recommendation.
Yes. So basically what we're gonna do is just, I'm gonna give you guys like a brief synopsis of what we've done in the past, what we want to do moving forward, and how our members and everything are living there. So basically, we currently have media buys for the local TV markets. That's 8, 12, Fox Richmond, and CBS 6. Campaigns are focused on broadcast TV and digital efforts to reach our audience. Our tactics for this recruitment include social displays, targeted videos, CTV and OTT. That's over the top. I'll explain more about that in a little bit. Pre-roll videos, YouTube, targeted emails. So basically, we meet with these stations once a month to go over our analytics to see how our campaign is performing, and also to make any changes that we need to make if we're not basically performing the way we want to perform. Broadcast side, local news, crime, time TV, daytime, sports, and then we have the NBA work. Leaning down football after this weekend, so the NBA will be the next big.
You can drive at 18.
No, 21.
I'm gonna say adults 18 plus.
That's our target audience.
Oh.
Maybe that's just how the networks cut it off in terms of outreach.
Okay. All right.
So our reach is 97.7. That's the number of people in a targeted audience that are exposed to a single ad serve. Impressions over 9 million. That's content that was delivered to somebody's feed within the lifespan of the campaign. Our frequency averaged about 19.3 over the lifespan of the campaign. And that's basically saying that over the lifespan of that campaign, a person is prone to see this ad or this commercial at least 19 times.
These numbers all came from the stations?
Yes.
And this is a composite of all four?
This is, it's mixed in between 4 and, so it's
So
8, 12,
This is a composite, this is total cumulative.
yes. On the digital side, we have online channels, such as the streaming platforms, and these can be text, images, and videos. So our social display, that's gonna mimic, your social feeds that you see in your Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, things like that. Targeted videos, audiences 22 to 65, for job seekers in the state of Virginia. CBT and OTT delivers commercials and digital streaming environments, and OTT is pretty good right now. That's over the top. And what that basically does is that's videos that's playing in your streaming platforms, which are unskippable or non-skippable. So those videos are playing throughout its entire rate. So that's giving us 1,000 impressions per month. Pre-roll videos, these are videos that you'll see before your content is started. These are skippable. Your YouTube, that delivers our audience on YouTube. The thing about this is that you only pay for the impressions that are completed. Targeted emails, again, these are job seekers. In the transportation industry in the state of Virginia, we deploy 2 emails a month. The first one goes out. Our open rates are pretty good.
Yeah, it's good, pretty good rate, 2.5%, pretty good.
Yes, sir. So that first and that second open rate is pretty strong. So we're pretty happy with that. It's just some of the samples and some of the stats. From the OTT videos, we have 16,000 impressions, 14,000 completion rate. I'm sorry, 14,000 completions. And our completion rate is 86.18%. As you can see with the targeted emails, we're performing pretty well, consistently passing the national average at 20.07%. So we're doing pretty well with that. And this chart here basically gives you a synopsis of the total applicants that we've had throughout the entire campaign by each month. And one of the things that we've had a chance to take a look at and run some analytics and run some numbers on. So our campaign currently right now is we're running October through March. The campaign went in March. And so far to date, operators, out of 196 total applicants, we've scheduled about 7.6 interviews. Out of that 7.6, we've hired about a third of those. And that's for operators, mechanics, 26 total applicants. This is again from October through December. We scheduled 26.9% of those total 26 applicants, and out of those 26.9, we hired about half, a little over half of those.
So can you tell me if I got my numbers right? We spent about 1.129877 for 6 months. We have 3 months of data, right? So you take the 1.129 divided by 2, half the campaign, divide that by 186 applications for operators. Just taking mechanics out for now, but for operators.
Cost per application.
Huh?
Cost per application.
Cost per application, cost per applicant is $3,000, right? You're an expert in this field. Can you do any, I'm sure the development committee is probably asking these questions. That's where this came from, right? Like, is that good or bad? I don't need an answer now. I'm just saying for you to look at, because, obviously.
Well, that's what
I'm not
I'm
gonna speak for
how
anybody
much
else.
does it cost and how effective is
Yeah,
it?
that's what I'm saying.
So
I'm
that's
fully-
that, outside of that, the rest of the matrix are.
I know this is a briefing on the development campaign does this work, and I'm sure they're supportive of it because we need it. But, your guidance, your opinion on this is effective. I know what I spent per applicant. I don't have $1 million advertising campaign, so it's hard to put apples to apples. But I know what I spend per applicant.
Also, what's the training needed to work for your company versus
Correct.
an operator? It's a
100%.
huge.
Yeah, and my pool, part-time workforce, I get it. But I'm just curious if you think that's good. $3,000 to get an application, and of which we're scheduling interviews for 15 from November to date. 15 interviews out of 190 applicants. So we're scheduling interviews for 10% of them.
Yeah, there was a comment that if we do this again next year, not to do it around holidays.
Yeah.
It seemed like that was not a good use of the funds, people are not switching jobs, as well as, maybe what started happening around those times as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a lesson learned. Another thing that we talked about was, okay, all of this is a compilation of various media sources for doing outreach. Maybe there is a better way for it, but.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, do we evaluate how much we're doing to each media outlet and whether that media outlet is bringing a return? Because it may be that everybody that applies watches 6 and they don't watch 8.
NBC is more
I don't
expensive.
know.
I guarantee you're more at NBC than you are for CBS. I know you are.
So I
So
will say, I've seen the commercials.
I've seen
Yeah,
them.
commercial.
I've seen them and they're great and they're well produced, I think.
Yeah.
I've seen them, I don't know if 19 times, but
Yeah,
daggone close.
I bet that,
Yeah,
I mean, it's not, I think the analytics are probably right. All I wanna know is how much we're spending and what the effect is. for the
$3,000 per applicant. So we just need to know if that's effective or not, and then, that's all. I mean, it's a necessity.
I just want to bring this up again, and I'm working on creating this broader conversation, but like a workforce development center, there's a warehouse on Maury and Richmond Highway, RPS owns. Tallheimer put it in the Diamond District project for the baseball stadium to help support creating that facility to be a workforce center. And what I want to do is bring you all on the table, because I think creating that skill pipeline, because it's going to be J. Sergeant Reynolds, dual enrollment with the RPS, it's gonna be for adults, and it's 300,000 square feet. It's really not that far from here. And I feel like advertising for jobs is great, but not everybody wants to drive a bus. And it's not like, trying to find someone to work at an event with Dan, which is, I have a lot of friends who work with Dan, it's great. But for me, that's something I feel like this specialized approach is gonna be needed, but where we don't have that really. But there's nowhere to go create that labored skill trade job type of applicant, and we need to develop that, and I would love to have it that you show the need, we create the program, students who graduate from high school go into this program, and they have your job, they have other ones around they can do, it's on the table for them, and we're having a much better applicant pool, because that 15 applicants or interviews from that pool of applicants is kind of, I would love to see it be a higher percentage, but qualifications, interest, all that stuff are hard to do. So I just want to put that in there because I feel like our workforce issues across the region, there's a big skills gap, and we're not, I don't think, doing enough to really fill that. And this is something I think we can do. So I just want to put that out there because it will be coming up as a conversation in the next month or so.
Even if my job applications are low, I get 400 applicants, I get 200 to respond to an interview request. Of that 200, I get 100 that might actually show up for the interview in order to hire 40 to get 20 in class.
Wow.
Every time, never fails. 400 down to 200 on scheduling, same thing.
Wow.
So we'll get the applications,
You
you
get
can call them
5%.
when they don't answer, or we'll schedule an interview.
Yeah, I know.
You're getting 5%.
And I think it came to this committee because there was a recommendation request about funding. So I wrote down what you guys want as far as the data, and I think the development team will have a presentation moving forward with Mike and marketing. But I think it came over to finance for temporary approval or recommendation of, I think, 500.
I was gonna say, what's the extension, 3 months?
That's just a 3-month extension to get us and then fiscal year, and then the campaign is budget. And for purposes of media inquiries, we're gonna switch to a social media campaign platform at that time, because summer is typically actually low in terms of TV watching. At that point, we're gonna do videos as well. The comment came from the development committee that we may need to do a little bit more look at who we're trying to bring in and cater our commercials or our images to the individuals. In fact, we have a lot of minority females, and therefore the second I feel to a 21-year-old male, whatever, to take a job where it's primarily minority female, things like that. So we'll look at, make sure there's diversity in terms of the outreach and trying to do, and then kick that back up, probably looking around September or October.
Would it be possible in that approach, because it's so much more personal, to get more of a, like, first person kind of account of the job? Like,
Well,
someone
I
from
mean,
an
I
actual-
think those commercials do somewhat have a first person.
Yeah,
account.
you have a smaller window, you only have so much time on social media to get their attention, so you need to have that be like a voice real quickly.
Oh, you know, just, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Like, that's me, I wanna make sure we think about it really tight.
Yeah,
$550, John, not budgeted, right? It's just
Right, so-
completely outside budget. It should be eating in the circles.
Correct. This 1,129,000 was ARPA funded. So I think, what Cheryl, Adrian and I were talking about, what Julie had previously done was, she was running to the board when we had the CARES, Trissa, and ARPA, basically a schedule of what we would use it for. So out of the ARPA, we
She
earmarked.
basically didn't throw it into the budget that would not be in a future budget. She only
Right, she wanted to
budgeted, she
have
did
it,
budget
so-
at one time.
and I will note that this one actually came in more at 1 million flat, so there was a surplus that could roll out.
So this committee is safe with that recommendation.
Yeah.
I'll get the exact
Yes.
number, but
That's
in your
10%
presentation,
savings.
it will be a recommendation.
12%, it's 11% savings,
Yeah.
that you can apply. I think it's necessary to keep that roll. We just talked about, in the operations committee, talked about goals of 100. Just so everybody knows, in the operations committee earlier today, we talked about a goal of 100 candidates in class this year. It's not far off what we're doing, not far off. It's attainable, it's doable, it's a reachable goal, it's not. And then an 80% graduation rate would give us 80 new operators, which the highest
we just
number of
gotta figure out
operators
how to
we've had in the
retain.
last 4 years is 46.
Our problem
We talked
hasn't
about-
been recruiting
Yeah, well-
as much as it's been retained.
You know, it's been both. The highest number of new operators we've had in the past 4 years is 46.
Oh, really?
Yes. We look at it, we're
Well,
looking
yeah,
at
I
that.
guess we do have.
We have both. But, you know, a goal with incentives to the crew would be measurable. And 80% graduation rate is not, that's not crazy. We've had 85 before. 80 in class in a year to start class is not crazy. We've had 68. And so it's very, very doable. That's why we have to keep supporting this effort, in my opinion.
8.3.
8.3 per month, 8.3 into class every month, 7 out. Meets a goal, and doubles our operator output for any year in the last 4. Therefore, I support this effort.
It's good to have some from operations committee in this committee.
I think it's fantastic, actually, if we've had crossover, right? I do think it's great. I think I'm not happy every time I see all these meetings just said.
Do you want to keep doing them on the same day?
Yeah.
I would. I just
Okay, that's
said
fine.
earlier, I'd
If
rather,
you're the
if I
one
can
that's
not be, I'd rather
affected.
do it all, so. if
You're the
it
one
takes me
affected,
40
so
minutes to
you're
get here, so I'd rather just do it. As long as Desh hasn't kicked me out yet, I'm using his internet. It's better.
If you're good, you're the one that we need to cater to.
It is effective, I'd rather block it, come down one time.
All right. Nothing else?